So let's get started right away. And you should follow all the steps. I've created this for you so that you can follow along easily. And if you get stuck at any point, even in future, you can just contact me and I will be able to assist you. So what I have here are the steps for what we're going to do. We're going to generate an SSH key and all these other steps, change our hostname, and then after doing all this, we're going to finally install cPanel. So first things first, we need to generate an SSH key. Since you're on Windows, you're going to need Git bash to follow along with me. And I'm going to show you how to install that in a moment. Even if you're not on Windows, you can follow along with terminal. So first, let's go and install Git bash. And to install Git bash, we need to install Git. Git will come with all the components like Git bash, Git GUI, and so on. So let's just search for Git. And you need to download it from Git SCM. I'm just going to click there on Windows and it will take me to the download page for Windows. I'll download the standalone installer for 64-bit system. And I want to install it. I don't want to use the portable one. I'll just install it. And then I will open it to install it. Next. I'll just install it with the default settings. Already exists. Would you like to install anyway? Yes. If you need to add anything to your installation, you can do so. So the only thing I will select here is I will add the Git bash profile to Windows terminal. You can also enable checking for updates, but I'm going to leave that out. Then I'm going to click next, next, and then select an editor. Here, since I have Visual Studio Code installed, I'm just going to choose that from my list here. And I will select Visual Studio Code. And then next, I will let Git decide next. I will leave it at the default. Leave the default option. Leave the default options for everything else that follows. Install. There we go. The installation is complete. I can launch Git bash. Let me just select launch Git bash. I don't want to view the release notes, so I'm just going to click on finish. And now the next step, we're going to see how you can deploy your Hetzner server. But before that, we'll need to generate an SSH key. So we're going to generate an SSH key and then add that to Valtra, and that's what we're going to use to log into our server. We don't want to use the password. Since you will be installing cPanel later, of course, you need to have a root user password, and you're going to see how you can change your root user password. So I'll open Git bash here. Let's generate our SSH key. So I'll come in here, and as I've said, the commands are here. So the first thing, we're going to make a directory where we can store our SSH keys. So it will be stored in my home directory in this folder called .ssh. And then inside of .ssh, I want to create my own folder. And that folder is where my keys are going to be located. So first, let me create these directories. So I'm just going to paste the command there. This has been created. I'm going to come back and now I need to generate my SSH key. In case you want to change the name of your folder, you can change the name there. Just copy this command in a text editor and edit it based on your preference. So here, I'm just going to copy this. I will paste. So let me paste it here and explain it here. So SSH keygen, this is a command that is used to generate SSH keys on Linux-based, Unix-based systems. Since you're using Git bash, you can use it without any problems. So -t is going to tell the system which type of key to generate, and it's going to generate this type of key, which is a modern key, and it's a shorter key. And nowadays, if you're generating an SSH key, just go with that. -f signifies the file name. So with -f, it means that we can create our SSH keys and give them a name. So for example, we did create this directory, and inside of that directory, we want to store SSH keys called this. So you can give it any name that you prefer. And then something else that is not here, but I can add is -c. Now -c is just a command that is added to the key, and it can let you know which key this server belongs to. So for example, if I was to add something here like Ricky's server key, this will let me know that this is for my Ricky server. Rocky, I mean. So if I was to copy this, I can generate my SSH key, and I can just do Control U. Yeah, Control U will delete the entire line. So I'm going to paste again, and in Git Bash you can do Shift Insert to paste. And the first thing you can see, it's asking me for a passphrase. Now a passphrase is important because when somebody gets your key, and it is possible for someone to get your key, if they do get it, they won't be able to use it if they don't know your passphrase. In this case, I'm just going to create a passphrase, and you should do the same as well. Enter, confirm the passphrase. So my key has been generated, and the location for my key is there. So you can see the key has -c/that, but when I was generating the key, I just used that. So that is the same thing. This simply signifies my home directory, and my home directory on this Windows computer is that. So that is what has been replaced by that. If you use this on Linux, it simply means your home directory. So now that we have our keys ready, the next thing we need to do is we need to take our public key, take the public key and add it to Hetzner. Before we get there, we're going to start by deploying a server. So on Hetzner, you need to add a project where you're going to put everything for that server. So if you want to deploy a server, you need to create a project. So you can add a new project. If you don't have a project, it's very easy to add. Just click Add Project, give it a name and save. So here I'm going to use the test project, and I'm going to create server. Click on Create Server to create a new server. I can choose the location for my server. So we are coming back to that issue of adding our SSH key, and it's something you can do here as well. Choose the location where you want your server. Always choose a location that is closest to your users. In this case, I'm just going to go with this location in Germany. And then the image, since I'm going to install cPanel, cPanel can be installed on Ubuntu, RockyLinux, Alma Linux, and CentOS. So I'm going to go with RockyLinux for this, and I'm going to stick with Rocky version 9. Next, I'm going to need to choose a server type, and you can go with dedicated virtual servers, or you can go with the shared VPS servers, and I'm going to stick with the shared options. And cPanel only supports AMD Intel servers, so go with those. And for this, cPanel requires at least 1 GB or 4 GB of RAM. So I'm going to select this Intel plan. I'm going to select that. And then as for networking, I'll just leave public IPv4 support and public IPv6 support. And then here under SSH, we need to add our SSH key, the one that we've just generated. And we can do that by coming here and click on Add SSH, and we need to paste our public key inside here. So our public key, we can find it easily by coming back here, and there is our public key. So I will copy that, and I need to open the key to look at the content of that key. So I will do Control L to clear the screen, and then I will paste in that location, and I need to open it. I want to open it with Visual Studio Code. So I'm just going to do code and then enter. You can add a comment, you can add your email and so on. So I'm just going to copy the entire content of that public key, copy, and I will come back to Hetzner and I will add the details for that key. And it has just given it the name. It's picked out the name from the comment that I added. I'm just going to leave the name as that, but you can change the name if you need to. And you can also set it as the default key. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to click on Add SSH key. I will unselect all the other keys and just use this key for my server. And then volumes, if you need to add volumes, you can add this later on. Even now, if you need to add extra volume, maybe you want to use it for backup, you can create a volume. But this is something that you can add later on if you don't need it now. So firewall as well, you can add firewall rules on the Hetzner cloud, and it's not really that difficult. You just add in the ports that you want to allow. And then backups, you can enable backups, which is a good thing. And backups are 20% of the server price. So if you enable backups, your monthly billing is going to go up with 20%. So of course, it's a good thing to enable. Make sure you enable that. You never know when you're going to need the backup. And then placement groups, you don't need that. We're going to leave that out. Labels, we don't need that as well. In this setup, we're going to leave that out. And then cloud config, I don't have any cloud init commands that I need to run in this server now. So I'm just going to leave it out. And then as for the name, I will use a fully qualified domain name. And hopefully Hetzner is going to add this as a host name on our server, because at some point we are also going to need to change the server host name. I will use this domain, and if you come down here, there's something we need. If you come down here, there's some things we'll need to do. We need to change the server host name, and I also need to add the server host name. I will also need to add that to Cloudflare. When we get there, we're going to talk about that. But for now, let's see what you can use as the server host name. So I can use server1.that as my host name. And I'm just going to copy this and add it here. Hopefully, it's going to add this as a host name for my server. Even if it doesn't, we're going to still need to change it. If everything is as it should be, let's just confirm everything here. We have RockyLinux. We have that. We've set up an SSH key. So I'm just going to create and buy now. So once we get our primary IP and the server is ready, we are going to log in via SSH using the SSH key that we created. While the server is deploying, we need to add some DNS records, and I'm going to use Cloudflare for that. I do have a video for Cloudflare and I've linked to it there. And I've linked the video here. This is a domain on Cloudflare. I'm just going to click there on DNS, and I need to add the IP address. So I will copy, come back to Cloudflare. So I will leave the other record as there, but I need to add a record for my host name. So I'm just going to click there on add record, and our host name is server1.mydomain. So to add the host name for that, I'm going to add an A record, and I will just call it server1, and I will paste in the IP address there. Since it's an A record, I'm just going to save. There we go. Okay, so the server seems to be ready. If you click on it, you can see the details about your Hetzner server. We have deployed our server. Let's see how we can log into this server. Let's get the IP. I'll just click on it to paste my IP. Our user by default is root. So let's go back to Git Bash. Control L to clear the screen. To log into your server, you're just going to do SSH. The user is root at the IP, shift insert to paste your IP, and then -I for the identity of the private key. And the private key, if I scroll all the way up here, the private key is that. So make sure you save this key paths once you generate your key. So I'm just going to select it and paste and enter. So it's asking us to accept the key fingerprint. So this, I will just type yes. You have to type yes and then enter. And since we added a passphrase for our SSH keys while we are generating them, then we're going to need to add that passphrase here. So make sure it's something that you remember. There we go. I'm now logged into my server. I'm now logged into my server. And if I was to do host name ctl, this will show us the details for our server, and we can see our static host is correctly added because when we were generating the server, that's what we added as the name of our server. So you can see the importance of that. We can see we are running RockyLinux 9, and this is a Hetzner server. So what I'm going to do here next is just to update the server, and since I'm root, I can just do dnf update. This command is here. In fact, the command is here. Once you log in, it's here. After we generated the key, we used it. Now we used it to log in there, and then update -y, and then we're also going to need to install all these other things. Of course, if you're following along, just come here and copy this, paste it, and you won't have to type anything. I'm being asked to confirm, and the reason for that is because I did not add -y in my command, and that is already there. So you won't need that confirmation yourself. I can confirm, and you have to type y. So you can see this is a small y, and this is a capital Y. This means that if you press enter without entering yes or no, the default is no, and it will not install or update what you need updated. So you have to explicitly type yes, and then enter. So it's going to download and do all the updates, but let me just come back here. I will need to install some of this. So this curl is what cPanel uses to download the script. And then cPanel is written in Perl, so it definitely will need Perl to run. And wget is just an alternative to curl for downloading items. And then vim, this is probably already installed. And this is the editor I will be using. On the terminal, just using vi will give me vim. And then screen, this is used when, in case your session closes and you're locked out of your server, if you log back in, you can just do screen and you'll get back what you were doing previously. So that's the benefit of this, and that's why I want to install it. And we're going to see where we use this when we get to installing cPanel. I'm just going to copy this part. This is just used to join two Linux commands. So once this runs, that will run next. That is what this is doing here. So let me come back to git bash. Let's wait for the updates to complete, and then we're going to install these applications. There we go. The update is complete. So I'm just going to do Control L to clear the screen, and I will paste in the commands for installing those applications. So I'm just going to do Shift Insert to paste in git bash and then enter. So let's see. Package curl is already installed. wget is already installed. No much argument for screen. It turns out on RockyLinux it was removed, but in RockyLinux 8 and below it is available. So what I'll need to do is I'll need to install the Apple package, and that's going to come with screen. You can screen is not available in the default DNF package repository. So I'm just going to Control L to clear the screen, and I will install DNF install Apple release. I'm going to add this here so that it doesn't confuse you. When you look at this, you're going to see that I've added the solution there. Paste. So I'm going to do DNF install Apple release. And I always forget to add the Y in advance. I can do Control C to abort the operation, and then I'm going to just add the -y here. So when you're installing anything on Linux, just add the -y in advance. All right, so that's installed. The next thing, let's install that screen. DNF-y install screen. And now you can see that it is installed. So I'm going to add that here so that you're not lost when you get there. When you are following along, you won't be lost. In the first part, we've deployed our server with an SSH key that we generated. We've logged into our server. We've updated the server and installed the necessary packages. In the next part, you're going to see how you can change the server hostname in case it's different and add the hostname to Cloudflare. We've already done that. You've seen me add the hostname to Cloudflare. And the reason I'm doing this is because that's what I'll use to log into my cPanel. I will not use my IP. I will use the hostname to log into my cPanel. The next part, you're going to see how we can create that. We're going to disable SC Linux. We're going to finally install cPanel. That's the next part.